So, the New York Knicks are actually playing well. They currently have an 8-10 record, so not great, but that's decent. They are the 8th seed in the East, so certainly in the playoff race. If we just go through some stats, they are last in points scored per game, but first in opponent scored points per game. So they're scoring the least amount of points, but they're letting in the least amount of points. They are 25th in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating, and 30th in pace. So those are some pretty impressive and wild and unorthodox stats. So I'm going to be taking a look at what those mean near the end. But let's just take a look at the roster and see how everyone's playing. Starting with Alfred Payton, who has been their starting point guard so far. I mean, he's been okay. 12.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. That's sort of a standard line for him. He's not a scorer at all, and has been inefficient. But he is a decent playmaker, and he does play hard. So, sort of fits into the Knicks culture this year, which I'll talk about more later. But he's been decent so far, just playing hard. Not a very efficient scorer, but his playmaking still brings value to this Knicks team. Next, we get to RJ Barrett, who is playing well in his sophomore season. I think it's a bit crazy that some people gave up on him after only one season, but he's playing very well this year, currently averaging 17.5 points and 7 rebounds in 36 minutes a game, so he's being played a lot. But I would say that's good for a young player and for their confidence and development. The efficiency isn't great. No one on the Knicks' efficiency is really that great because, they score the least amount of points. But that being said, he's being asked to do a lot, and he's doing it decently well. They're running some sets to get him downhill and to get him better shots, and then he's sort of one of their go-to guys near the end of the clock if they haven't created a shot yet. Next, we get to Reggie Bullock, who appears to be their preferred starting small forward. He's averaging 8 points a game. He's just sort of a 3-and-D guy, the glue guy in the starting lineup, plays hard, fits into their culture. Next, we get to their star player, Julius Randle. He's currently averaging 22.7 points, 11 boards, and 6 assists, and he's doing it on good efficiency. So it might be a little unsustainable, but he's playing very, very well. The best basketball of his career by far. Certainly an all-star if the all-star teams were chosen today. And he's being asked to do a lot like RJ Barrett, also playing 36-plus minutes. And almost everything they do runs through Julius Randle. Whether it be on the short roll or catching it on the elbow where he can shoot a mid-range jumper or get to the rim or play make. And that's sort of indicative of his 6 assists. He's not a great playmaker, but you touch the ball enough, you're going to get enough assists, and he's getting 6 assists a game. So just the playmaking and the shooting and the scoring, and then also the rebounding, that's more product of him being on the court for 36 minutes, but he is playing very well. He's been the Knicks' best player this season, and I've been very impressed with what he's been able to do in such a big role for this team. And then next we get to Mitchell Robinson, who's been pretty good this season, currently averaging 9 points, 8 boards, and 1.7 blocks, a pretty typical stat line for him. And on offense, he's nothing special, but he's a good lob catcher, a good pick and roll player, just that type of thing that you'd expect from an athletic 7-foot center. And then on defense, he's a good rim protector. This season, his fouls are down from previous seasons. That was an issue for him. It's still a bit of an issue, but it's definitely improved, which is really good to see. And, he's just a really good rim protector and the back line of their very good defense. And that's evidenced by his 1.7 blocks per game. If we get to the bench unit, they have a decent bench unit. And first, let's start with Emmanuel Quickley, who's a player that I'm a real big fan of. I think he should be starting. He's playing so well, averaging 11 points and about 2.5 assists in 18 minutes a game. And, he's a very, very promising player. I think he should be starting over Payton. He has good speed, as his name would suggest, quickly. But he's also a good shooter, someone who is shooting in the high 30s from 3 and can space the floor for the Knicks players like RJ Barrett and Julius Randle and maybe improve their efficiency. And he also has a great mid-range and floater game. Against the Magic, his floaters were just insane. Just every time, bank, swish. His touch is very, very good, especially for a young player. And you'd think he'd keep improving. So I really like what I'm seeing from Quickley, and that bodes well for the Knicks' future. And he's looking really, really good. And then there's Austin Rivers, who's sort of a three-point shooter for them off the bench, but can do a bit more than that, can do a bit off the dribble and play D. And he's just been pretty solid, averaging 8 points a game. Just the shooting, the spacing, and just playing hard. And that's sort of all you need from him. Next, we get to Alec Burks, who's only played 6 games for them, but he has impressed in those 6 games, averaging 16.5 points a game. That'll come back down to earth a little bit as he plays more minutes, but he has looked good, and he averaged quite a few points last season, so maybe it won't come back down. And he's a very good shooter, provides some spacing, some scoring for the Knicks, and that's really good. Next, we get to Kevin Knox, who is a player who is disappointed a bit in his NBA career. This season, not too bad, about 7 points, but what I really like is the 39% from 3 on 3.5 attempts a game. So maybe that's his role in the league, just as a shooter, a long shooter off the bench. That could be where he makes his money, just being that type of player, not a star, but still a solid role player. And if you can shoot, you have a spot in the NBA most of the times. Next, we get to Obi Toppin. He's only played 8 games, and in those 8 games, he's only played 12 minutes per game. He's been all right. He's had a couple of nice highlight dunks. You can see he's a very talented offensive player. His ability to shoot, his ability to be a threat in the pick and roll, and to obviously those dunks. But the reason he's not playing more is just the defense. He's a very stiff defender, not very quick on his feet, and Carmelo Anthony was cooking him in that Portland game. So not great defensively, but still shows promise offensively. And we get to Nerlens Noel. He's sort of your classic backup center, protect the rim, run, jump, dunk type of center. He's a solid backup, and keeps the rim protection at a high level even when Mitchell Robinson leaves the game. So that's sort of been the roster and their talent. Solid, not great, but give some credit to Tom Thibodeau, who is the coach of the Knicks. He's really changed what they're doing, and he's having them play really, really well. And here are a few things I've noticed. And first is the defense. They're last in opponents' points allowed, and they have the 4th best defense in the league. So that's very impressive, considering they don't really have any elite defenders. And it's just the playing hard, everyone giving 100%, because if you don't play hard, well, Tibbs is just going to sub you out and you're just not going to play. So this is a group of players who want to work and a coach who wants to have them work, and they're playing really hard on defense, diving for loose balls, all that type of thing. And, that makes a big difference. Playing hard effort on defense is like half the battle. If you give good effort, and then none of them are just terrible defenders. So that has led to that, and a very good scheme from Tom Thibodeau has led to them having the 4th best defense in the league. And when you're allowing so few points, you're always going to be in games. You're always going to have a shout, because you're not going to get blown out because the opponent just isn't scoring that many points. Next, and this is really impressive, and part of the genius almost of the Knicks, and that is they play at the slowest pace in the NBA. And why is that so smart? Well, that means they have less possessions in a game than any other team. So the talent gap, as the Knicks aren't a very talented team, and there's lots of talented teams in the NBA, means that less possessions means less chances to score for each team. Think about it this way. If you're the Knicks, would you rather play the Lakers in a 1-game series or a 15-game series? You would probably pick the 1-game series, because over the 15 games, you'd assume the better team would win. But over the 1-game series, you never know. The Knicks get hot shooting, they play good defense, and they beat the Lakers. So it's sort of that sort of thing, but on a smaller scale within a game, would you rather play a game with, I don't know, 80 possessions or 120 possessions? Those are exaggerated numbers, but it shows the Knicks just giving their opponents less chance to score and less chance to show that they are a better team talent-wise, and that means that the Knicks can win some games just by in low-scoring affairs. I think they beat the Magic in like 87 to 84 or something. It might have been a bit more, but it's that type of game that the Knicks are able to play and able to win. Finally, they're riding their two best players, RJ Barrett and Julius Randle. They're both playing 36 minutes plus per game, and they're both involved on almost every possession when they're in the game. So that's a big thing. The Knicks not a super talented roster, so just give it to your two best players for every possession and see what they can do. And they do have one of the worst offenses in the league, 25th, but it's not last. And they have such a good defense that they can live with that. So that's something else that they're doing. So if we talk about both their short and long-term future, short term, could they make the playoffs? Maybe. I'm a bit doubtful just because they're not very talented. But you play defense, you're going to be in games. And, I don't think they'll be the worst team in the East. Could they get in the play-in game? Sure. You play good defense, as I've been saying. But I'm not too sure. I think they might just, though, make the play-in game. Like around the 10th seed. They're going to be below 500. But can they have a higher win percentage than 40%? Maybe. We'll have to see, but the opening signs have certainly been encouraging. And then the long-term future is even more bright. They have plenty of young players I really, really like quickly. And, they're building a culture that could be desirable for superstar players. You think of a team that plays defense and has young talent and has a good vibe around them. Also playing in New York City, one of, if not the biggest market in the world. That's desirable for star players. So the Knicks, they're 8-10. They play good defense. They play hard, and the future is looking pretty good. And the Knicks are back, baby.